Thank you.
You're welcome.
Rhonda, I'll wait on you to tell me that we have a quorum
Good
to
morning.
start.
We do have quorum, but we got like another 30 seconds to a minute, so,
Okay, I'll wait a minute.
and more people coming, so let's see. Okay, I have 10 a.m., so whenever you're ready.
All right. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this Mountain Lion TAC meeting to order at 10 a.m. on March the 6th. We will start with roll call.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, we have a couple more people joining. Just a moment. All right. Thanks for your patience. Coconino County, Kim Musselman.
Present.
Thank you. Coconino County Citizen Representative Carol Covington.
Also present. Good morning.
Morning. City of Flagstaff, Jeff Bowman is joining us today.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. City of Flagstaff Citizen Representative Michelle James.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning. Metro Plan Dave Wessel.
Present.
Thank you. NAU Aaron Stone.
Here.
Thank you. NAU student Carly Vandermeesh. Not sure if she will be joining us or not. CCC Kurt Stull.
Present.
Thank you. And our economic development representative, Gail Jackson, is excused. We have members of staff here in the room and on Zoom. And we also have our attorney, Cameron Stanley, on Zoom.
Morning, everyone.
Morning. I'll turn it back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'll turn it over to Sam Short for a safety minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Transit Advisory Committee. Today's safety minute is very applicable for today, and it's about driving in a winter storm. So driving in winter storms can be dangerous, and by using some of these simple tips to drive safely, you can face almost any weather Mother Nature decides to send your way. Here are a few tips to help you drive safely while in a winter storm. If possible, do not try to stop while going up or down a hill. While driving on a grade, you should significantly reduce your speed in case you need to stop. If your vehicle starts to slide, steer into the direction of the slide. This will help you stay in your lane without overcorrecting. Increase your following distance of other vehicles by 8 to 10 seconds. Accelerate and decelerate as slow as you possibly can. and increase your following distance, and this will allow you to greatly reduce your chances of running into somebody. Ensure you have the proper tires for the conditions. If visibility is severely limited, pull off the road to a safe place and do not drive until the conditions improve. Avoid pulling off onto the shoulder unless it's an absolute emergency. Limited visibility means other vehicles can't see yours on the shoulder of the road. Please follow these simple steps to keep yourself safe today during our winter storm. Thank you and welcome to the March Transit Advisory Committee meeting.
Thank you, and that was very timely with the weather today and tomorrow. Next, we have milestone anniversaries. Heather.
So good morning. I'll just check. Can you hear me okay? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry, I am in a coffee shop in Washington, D.C., joining you today. So I appreciate the opportunity to participate. Today's milestone anniversaries for the month of March are here on the screen. We have Herman Ramirez celebrating 10 years as a transit operator here at Mountain Line. Herman is a cornerstone of our team who is very reliable and is often complimented by our customers for his efforts to provide excellent care and service. Ray, I'm not going to attempt to say Ray's last name because I'm sure I will not get it correct, but Ray is celebrating his first anniversary here at Mountain Line, and he's been a delightful addition to our team. He regularly comes in on his days off to help cover, and one of my favorite things to learn about Ray is that he often uses the bus to get to and from work when his shift allows for it. So our riders can actually find him both as a customer and as a driver. And with that, that concludes the March anniversary.
Thank you, Heather. Next is the call to the public, and there is nobody from the public attending today's meeting. The next item is approval of the TAC minutes for February 6th. Is there any corrections or changes to the minutes that were provided for February 6th, 2025? Hearing none, I would like to see if there's a motion to approve the TAC minutes as written.
This is Carol. I'm glad to make that motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
This is Dave. I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All in favor of approving the February 6th, 2025 minutes, say aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Hi.
Any opposed? Right, Rhonda, that passed unanimously. And then our first presentation is the Vulnerable Roadway User Plan.
Hey, you know what, Rhonda, I can't see the slides. I'm not sure if that's just me.
You see it now?
Um, let's see. Aha, here we go. Thank you. I'm not used to Zoom these days. Well, thank you, Chair and members of TAC for allowing me the opportunity to present to you today. My name is Mandia Gonzalez, and I am a transportation planner with Metro Plan. And I believe most of you in the room are familiar with Metro Plan, and our mission is to facilitate improvements and programs for all transportation modes through collaborative priority setting, planning, and the strategic pursuit of funding. And one of our values is a reduction in deaths or leading to 0 deaths and serious injuries, which will bring us to our next slide, the Vulnerable Road User Safety Action Plan. Next slide, please.
Fine.
Oh, no worries. And actually, we can move on if you'd like to the next slide.
Thank you.
Great. So just a quick note, you know, when we talk about vulnerable road users, we are referring to people who walk, bike, and roll outside of a vehicle. These people are disproportionately impacted by serious injuries and fatal crashes on our region's roadway. So for today, we are going to present our findings as outlined in our draft document. This slide is just to provide some context on this planning project. Our goal is to make the Flagstaff region's streets safer for all who use them, and especially those who are the most vulnerable, folks that walk, bike, and roll. And the purpose of this project is to consolidate our existing safety-related work. There's a variety of plans out there from the city, from ADOT, from the county that have already identified robust safety improvements. So really bringing that all together and helping to better prioritize those projects with VRUs, vulnerable road users, in mind. This will also provide direction to our partners on how to address these deaths and serious injuries and to establish Metro Plan's commitment to Vision Zero. And if you're unfamiliar with Vision Zero, it is a strategy to reduce or eliminate traffic fatalities and serious injuries on our roadways. Next slide. Thank you. So this plan has many functions. With any safety plan, we are going to identify the countermeasures that improve safety for our community members. We want to identify quick build, low cost improvements that can lead to immediate change on our roadways. Like I mentioned, consolidate and review these existing safety recommendations, prioritize safety projects. A lot of this work will support grants and funding opportunities. And of course, we hope to use this information with our partners to support and advise them on reaching their safety goals as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and start with a little bit of national context here. The image on the left of the United States demonstrates the top 20 most deadliest states for people walking. This is an annual report that is put out by Smart Growth America. This is, of course, just focused on pedestrians at this time, but of the 20 most deadly states for people walking, Arizona ranks number 5. If we look to the graph on the right, this is the fatality rate in comparison between, obviously, the Flagstaff region, the state, and the nation. Flagstaff is represented by the blue line, so at the bottom. And as you see, as with the state and the nation, we had that peak, unfortunately, coming out of COVID. Luckily, we are seeing those fatality rates decline in 2022. What you'll see here, most interesting between 2022 and 2023, is that Flagstaff is on par with the state, which is higher than the nation. So we need to do our part in the larger context to protect those vulnerable road users. Next slide, please. All right, so moving into some of our local crash findings. So we evaluated the crash data of bicyclists and pedestrians over a 7-year period, and this was from 2017 to 2023, and this crash data is provided by the Arizona Department of Transportation. So over the 7 years, our region experienced 498 pedestrian and bicycle crashes in the Flagstaff region, so any severity of crash. Of those crashes, 27 pedestrians suffered a fatality and 8 bicyclists a fatality. 28% pedestrian crashes of the total pedestrian crashes resulted in a serious injury or fatality, and 18% for bicyclists as well. Next slide. Here's a little bit of a historical trends over the crash period, that 7-year crash period. So the graph on the left, top left, represents all bicycle and pedestrian crashes. Unfortunately, we have a steady incline in the total number of these crashes. Like I said, this is pretty much on par with the state at this time. Below that graph we wanted to separate out the fatalities specifically. So, excuse me, there was that peak in 2021 as seen in the previous graphs, and luckily a decline in those fatalities moving into 2023. Furthermore, we wanted to look at the crashes impacting pedestrians and bicyclists separately. So on the right, we do see a decline for bicycle-related crashes in our region. However, our pedestrian crashes are continuing to increase. Once again, follows that national and state trend. Next slide. Thank you. So as we attempt to reduce or eliminate serious and fatal crashes, we wanted to get a sense of who is being impacted by these. So ADOT's crash reporting system provides gender and age to us. So on the left, we see that men are primarily impacted by these VRU serious and fatal injuries, regardless if they are a bicyclist or a pedestrian. Looking at age, we wanted to investigate any trends here. As a nation, it is reported that the 55 plus community is seeing a substantial increase in serious injuries and fatalities. However, here in Flagstaff, our trend is opposite, with 18 to 34-year-olds experiencing the highest number and percentage of those serious and fatal crashes. And, we're assuming that with our younger demographic is brought in by the university. So that could be the difference between our results and the nation. Next slide. All right, so here is a map of where the crashes are happening. So the circles represent bicyclists while the squares represent pedestrians. And these are color coded based on the severity of crashes. So green being a minor crash and red representing a fatality. What's interesting to see is the density of crashes along the Milton corridor and downtown area. While there are several, many tend to result in a moderate injury compared to the east side of town, where there are substantially more fatalities, especially related to pedestrians. And this could be contributed in part to the land uses are very different out there, and the road designs favor, wider roads and faster speeds in those areas. Next slide. So where are these crashes happening? So we needed to look at these specific places where they occur, and we found some very interesting results. Number one is at marked crosswalks at an intersection. This makes up 36% of the crashes. This is followed by 13% not in a crosswalk or intersection. And then, of course, there's 10% of crashes occurring in a bike lane. So just focusing for a moment on the crossings of pedestrians, that really represents in total 58% of the crashes. So in addition to looking at these areas and the infrastructure, we needed to get to the why of these types of crashes. And there are contributing factors that are based on both behaviors and actions of all involved in a crash. So the list on the left are the items that really rose to the top in relation to the stats on the right, excuse me. So our top three contributing factors are vehicles not yielding at intersections or crosswalks, peds and bikes crossing the roadway at unmarked crossings or mid-block, and bikes being struck in the bike lane by vehicles or due to riding the wrong direction. So this information really helps us to get a sense of not only the challenges that bikes and peds face on our roadways, but also the behaviors and the risks that they take to get to where they're going. Next slide. All right. So I should have said that this presentation is kind of the first part of our planning process. So we've gone through the variety of crash data that we have available. We did some substantial outreach that led to some qualitative data, and those items really informed our action areas. And the action areas will further inform our recommendations. So I'll talk a little bit about the action areas on the next slide. These action areas will help to prioritize projects and investments within a 2 to 5 year period. So immediate impacts to our transportation safety can happen Of course, this will require support from our partner agencies, but we will use these actions further to review and refine current safety recommendations, as well as determine these potential low-cost, easy-to-implement projects that immediately improve transportation safety. And part of the reason we're focusing on this 2 to 5 year planning period is because there's already, as mentioned, several safety related plans out there, but a lot of those projects are really big in scale and scope, and will take time to find adequate funding and get those implemented. So trying to focus on what can we get out the door quickly and have impacts for improving safety. Let's see. Next slide, please. Great. So, you know what? I'm sorry. I have a different slide, but that's okay. All right. So as part of this planning process and of our action areas as well, MetroPlan has developed a new publicly available data set called a risk exposure assessment. And this is an online tool, and I'll give you a little preview of it here in the next slide. But this purpose of this tool is to, really understand those safety risks related to infrastructure and the geometry of our roadways, understand those influences on exposure to crashes, determine if higher risk impacts disadvantaged communities. This also provides a scoring of our roadways to help us prioritize projects within those areas. And it's more of a proactive than a reactive tool. Next slide. Great. So before we showcase the new tool, it's important to have a definition of what is a risk factor and what is exposure. So risk factor, we are defining as a characteristic or behavior that increases the likelihood of a negative outcome. So as described here, the physical design of the roadways. This could be something like the number of lanes or the speed, etc. Exposure is the condition of being exposed to something. So in this case, the vulnerable road users are exposed to a risk factor, which is essentially a roadway attribute. Next slide. So as mentioned, this is a publicly available tool. At the at the end of our analysis of the various roadway attributes, we had a very long list of roadway information provided by the city, county, and ADOT. And we identified items listed on the left as increasing or impacting the risk of VRU crashes. So we generated this risk score modeled after the highest risk factors. So as you see on the left, this is our scoring model. We have equity areas, through lanes, right turns, left turns, bike facility width, speed limits, and then vehicle volumes for these roadways. Each roadway was given these points on a scale of 0 to 12, with roadways of a higher risk having that higher score. So like I said, this gives us an opportunity to really review not only the crash data, but what's on the ground physically, so we can determine the best way to improve safety in our community. And this data set, we do plan on conducting regular reviews of the data. So this tool is intended to be iterative and can respond to any future trends that we see. Next slide. All right. Well, pretty much concludes my presentation, but just a little bit on where we're going next with this process. We're actually meeting today with our executive board to discuss a Vision Zero commitment. Once that's established, we'll work through policies to support that commitment, then move into strategies, which will then lead us to prioritizing projects and programming. So I'm happy to answer any questions folks may have.
Thank you. Great information. Does the TAC have any questions or comments?
This is Carol. I had a question. I wondered if train-related accidents are considered in here.
Yes, we do have that information within our documents, and ADOT had recently completed a rail crossing study for the state. So we received a lot of information on bikes and peds impacted at those crossings.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, again, thank you for taking your time today for giving us.
I had a quick question.
Oh, okay.
Hi, sorry. This is Michelle James. I wondered, what's your timeline on getting to the proposed prioritized projects and programs?
Yes, that is an excellent question. We are working through, obviously, our policies, which will identify those projects and programs. We're shooting for the fall, early winter in that time frame. Can certainly provide the group here an update once we get that schedule finalized with the current changes we're having here in house.
Great. Thank you for that update. I look forward to
course.
hearing what you come up with. This is
Perfect.
very interesting analysis. And thanks for the map as well. That
Yes,
was
thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Okay, again, thank you for the presentation.
Appreciate it.
Next, the TAC will review the draft board agenda for later in the month. The first item on the list is the organizational structure review, and that item has been tabled until a future meeting. The next one is compensation study, and that I'll turn over to Sam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Transit Advisory Committee. I'm Sam Short. I'm the Workforce Director with Mountain Line. As Heather told the board last month, to stay competitive in the local job market and to abide by our compensation and classification policy, we do a compensation study every 3 to 5 years. The last time Mountain Line did a compensation study was back in 2019, and it was implemented in 2020. So currently we have TransPro and Mercer who are conducting a compensation study for us, and they have given us some preliminary information or high-level preliminary information that we felt was okay to update the board with. So we wanted to do that today. Just for information, the transit operators and transit supervisors were not identified as needing changes due to the increase last summer, so they will not be part of the preliminary information that I give to you today. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So the preliminary information that Mercer gave us was that they are going to recommend that we modify our pay rate table modification. I'm sorry, Rhonda, I think you went one slide too far. Can you go back one?
Might be a delay or something.
Oh,
There you
okay. So thank you. So one of the first recommendations that TransPro is making, we currently at Mountain Line have 30 position grades, and those are numbered 301 to 330. So for example, a 302 would be a customer service representative, and a 330 would be the GM and CEO. We do not use 301 currently, so that's why I did not start with that one. But we only use 18 of those grades currently. So Mercer is recommending that we change our number of position grades and also change the grade table to 401 to 416. So for example, to give you an example, I am currently in our current grade structure, I am currently rated a 325. The suggested change, I would be graded as a 413. So since the proposed number of position grades do not directly correlate with the current number of position grades that we have, approximately 6 to 8 of our positions that are filled will be regraded depending on where they align with the market compensation data. So that's why that was the reason for the example that I gave you. Next slide, please, Rhonda. Mercer also let us know that they did find that 55% of our positions are currently in the middle third of their pay range. 13% of our employees are in the upper third of their pay range, and 33% of our employees are rated in the lower third of their pay range. So they're also recommending that we change our pay rate table modification, or modify our pay rate table, or pay range table, as some people refer to it. And they suggest that we raise our current starting salary to 8% below our current 25th percentile. So for example, if my starting salary was $68,308, they're suggesting that that minimum pay rate be raised to the 25th percentile, which would be $73,162. The 25th percentile essentially correlates to 5.5 years of experience for our comp and classification policy. They're also recommending that we decrease the number of steps in our pay rate or pay range table and broaden each one of those steps in salary amount for each step. Also, 5 positions were identified as needing immediate adjustments. Next slide, please, Rhonda. Mercer also identified that many of our leadership positions, that the starting salary be raised, and that historically a lot of our leadership positions were underpaid according to historic rates from our current job economy. And then the Mercer will have our final reports and recommendations hopefully in April, and they will be delivering that final report and recommendation to the TAC and board. And again, hopefully that will be in April. And that is all I have. Do you have any questions?
Thanks, Sam. Any questions for Sam?
This is Carol again. It occurred to me overall that compensation is just one part of being able to retain employees. And I just wondered if it wasn't appropriate to say, while compensation is not the only piece of why someone would choose to work here, it is nonetheless an important element.
Yes, thank you for the question and comment. I forgot to mention, and Heather did mention it last month, that they are also looking at our other benefits to make sure that we are comparable with the pay ranges in our area.
Okay, I mean, the employee satisfaction, how they feel a part of the team, and things of that nature. I know it's hard to quantify, but I felt like reference to that was missing as I read through it. I also wanted to ask you a quick question on page 16 of well, let's see, what does it say? Yeah, page 16 of 33, which is in your staff report. It describes, in the second paragraph, in July of 2024, Mountain Lion implemented a pay change for operators and operations supervisors, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the next sentence, it says, and brought an approximately 10% plus up for our team in part-time job seekers. And it was unclear to me what exactly that meant.
That indicates the amount of additional applicants that have either applied or become employees as part-time transit operators.
Yeah, I think plus up is a bit of a buzzword.
Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Okay, I just thought it might be useful to rephrase that if people aren't attuned to the lingo. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Sam. The next item is the FY 26 operating budget. Josh.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So this is the second in a series of budget reviews for the fiscal year 2026 budget that we will seek approval of in June. So for the fiscal year 2026, you can move to the next slide. We are looking at an operating budget, total operating budget of $14.2 million. Of course, this is the entire budget to operate all of Mountain Line's transit programs. We're seeking to increase the entire operating budget by $1.2 million over the fiscal year 2025 base, which is a 9% increase for the year. The increase does include the workforce investment budget items we discussed in February at the Transit Advisory Committee and Board of Directors meetings. And so as a subset of the entire operating budget, the workforce expenditures consume the largest portion, about 70% of all spending. So if you kind of set aside that $9.7 million portion of the budget, we're left with the expenditures we're discussing today. The remaining 30% is, anything related, not related to salaries and benefits, everything from liability insurance, utilities, service contracts, vehicle and facility maintenance costs, IT services, office supplies, really all the background expenses that support the transit operations. And that remainder of the budget is increasing by $123,000. Next slide, please. I've just listed here all the expense categories that we've proposed increasing in the budget. IT expenses, specifically in the realm of computer hardware, has been increased for just FY 2026 by about $10,000. We do have a routine annual budgeted computer replacement cycle. This year we do have this one-time increase for some older machines that will no longer be supported by current software. So I'm just getting anything that may have been lagging in its replacement cycle up to speed. Moving down to utilities, we're moving everyone's aware we're moving the administrative and customer service operations across town to the Downtown Connection Center this spring, June, I think. And so utilities have been increased for this new real estate. We do expect there will be a shift of some utility demand from the current Caspar offices to downtown. But of course, with a new building, there will still be some level of additional demand. Water billing rates, I think most of you will be aware, were approved to be increased over the next, I think, 5 years to support the water infrastructure needs of the city. So that's reflected in the increase of this budget. For electricity, APS had approved some rate increases as well, and those are showing up now. The downtown connection center does have a sizable solar installation on its roof, so that will help offset some, but not all of the increased energy demand. Moving on to vehicle parts and supplies. This would include, tires and just all of the parts required to keep vehicles in a state of good repair. Obviously, without operational vehicles, we can't very effectively operate transit service. So we've increased these budget lines by an average of 5%. Vehicle parts are something that have seen an ongoing significant inflation in retail costs over the several years since COVID initially constrained supply chains. I'll say that that inflation was beginning to subside over the last year. I don't think we know yet what effect new tariffs may have on parts that come from Mexico, Canada, or other countries. So hopefully they'll won't significantly increase too much, though. Next up, facilities and contracted facility services. We do contract out janitorial services, some snow removal, other landscaping type services. Our contracts typically include required increases if the city's minimum wage increases, and that has happened annually lately. So there are some increases with those contracted services. And then facility supplies are similar to vehicle parts and supplies, and are seeing an overall inflation of retail costs. Some amount of increased facilities maintenance is also needed for the downtown connection center, although as with the utilities, some of those should be offset by less activity occurring at the Caspar office. And finally, travel and training costs. We've maintained the same travel and training budget for a number of years now. I think anyone who's taken a trip will have probably noticed that all aspects of travel have increased in some way. Airfares are becoming a little bit more expensive, lodging, conference attendance fees, and so on. We do believe that professional development of staff and participation in transit industry groups are important. So we are increasing that budget to kind of reflect the current costs, which is that budget will be about $100,000 across the organization. Next slide, please. So we have last year for FY25, we do have a budget for electricity for our zero emissions buses that we have so far. We do have some more vehicles on order. I don't think they'll arrive. They'll probably arrive the end of FY26 or early FY27. They're in the production queues. But those operating costs are trending lower than the hybrid diesel vehicles that we have now, so that is great. We have in FY25 the budget for fuel was increased significantly due to projections of escalating fuel prices. this was kind of an overcorrection, and fuel prices have mostly stabilized. So we've reduced the fuel budget by $145,000 for next year, FY 2026. This decrease will kind of help offset those increases in the other areas of vehicle maintenance. And then we talked a little bit about the facilities maintenance increases for the opening of the Downtown Connection Center. We have projections based on, square footage and the number of facilities and different things. So those have been worked into the budget. And then in the last year, we changed our primary banking relationship from more national bank to a more local regional bank. We changed our point of sale for bus pass and fares to a different merchant services or credit card processing. So that we've reduced banking and merchant service fees budget by about 20%. We were able to cut that the rates for those by making those changes. I think everyone will be familiar with, over the last number of years, insurance has significantly gone up just about every year. We're keeping the budget at about the same this year. Our current broker has quoted some amount of minor increases across the different insurance products. We do have a procurement pending at the moment, has not been awarded, but it will potentially yield an approximate decrease in cost. So that should remain fairly flat, thankfully, for this year. And that's, I think, the last slide. Don't really have anything else major. So I'm happy to take any questions, though.
Thank you, Josh. Do we have any questions for Josh? You're not hearing any. Thank you again, Josh, for the presentation. Our next one is the biennial performance report, and that's going to be by Busy.
Great, thank you, Chair and members of the TAC. I'm going to be sharing a bunch of data. I hope I don't lose you. Please ask questions at any time. So my first report, we're on the next slide, please. Our biannual performance. So you should be familiar with a lot of these metrics. So we're looking at the 3 columns on the left are actual. The 3 columns on the right are goals for future years, 1 year out, or sorry, current year, 3 years out, and 7 years out. And I also want to note that in the bold square, I'm comparing half of 1 year, July to December actual, to a full year's goal, full FY25. So when you're comparing trips across those lines, it definitely looks bad. We should be at about half. And so I'll just talk through that. So as you're looking at that, don't get too shocked. And let's see. Great. Yes, please, again, jump in with any questions. So I'm going to start with the gold box, our fixed route bus service. So we're not quite at our 50% projection of ridership, but we did go to full service in August with routes 2 and 4, and truly full service with route 10 in January. So we are seeing a 10% increase from July to December. We had a nice 14% increase in January alone, just from that Route 10 for a couple of weeks. So we do think that we're still going to meet that 2 million ridership mark. You can see the cost per passenger an hour, we're doing quite well compared to our goal. And passengers per hour, not quite at our goal, but again, we hope to see that increase with ridership over this second half of the year. System-wide, we're at 72% of pre-COVID, that FY19 benchmark. And then I just want to also note the passengers per hour can be so deceiving. So it says, you know, we're at 22, 23 passengers per hour. So that's really spread across the system. Once we drill into a per route analysis, so Route 10 is our highest ridership route at 70 passengers per hour. And you can see I can see Route 66 has, most of our routes really falls more into that average passenger per hour. I would say our Route 5 and our Route 8 are lower performing at 10 passengers per hour. So it really varies across the system. Also, given the time of day, our peak ridership hours of 7 to 8 and 3 to 4 p.m., you're going to see a lot more riders per hour. So again, the average really washes out some of our really excellent performance across routes and during the day. I'm going to move on to demand response, light blue boxes. So we have both paratransit and microtransit that provide origin and destination service, and they only operate when trips are requested, similar to like taxi service. These services are commingled. We use the same vehicle, same driver, that is Mountain Line vehicle and driver, and trips are grouped together as a share ride for efficiency. Paratransit is eligibility based for people with disabilities who do not have the functional ability to ride fixed route buses, either permanently or under certain conditions, and that area overlaps with Mountain Line bus routes. It's required by the Americans with Disabilities Act. And then microtransit is really like open to the public. We put it into service in FY22. It was a pilot program for that first year and then became permanent in FY23. And that's really focusing on the Huntington industrial area, our more vulnerable community members accessing community services in that area. So there's some background. Let's focus on paratransit numbers. So we have seen a 46% increase in paratransit ridership over FY24. So they are continuing to come back. We're still at 72% of normal. It's interesting that matches fixed route as well. But yeah, really we're seeing people come back to paratransit trips, just not at that pre-COVID level. And then microtransit, we continue to see that ridership fluctuate. I will say we're really excited to see that ridership up 153% over FY24. And that is very specifically due to our fare change on the microtransit service that went in November. So we changed fare from $1 to $1.50 on microtransit if you're paying for a single ride with cash. If you have a bus pass, you can now use that on microtransit, and that's where we've seen the highest ridership drive, which is fantastic. So now if you have a bus pass, like my employee pass, I can use that now on microtransit to ride for free and continue my trip to get access to various services there. So just in, so that 153% in ridership, we're continuing to see that costs per trip pretty reasonable, a little higher than our goal, but we're continuing to monitor that as the ridership increases. Hopefully this just means we're getting more efficient, more buses are full as they're going to that area, but we'll continue to monitor and report back. And then now I'm going to move to taxi program. Again, jump in with any questions. I can stop anytime. So the orange boxes, we have our city and our county taxi program. You can see costs are a little bit different because obviously in the county, they're going a lot further to various destinations. But overall, that cost is much better compared to our paratransit cost. So that's the goal of this program. Taxi is only available to paratransit eligible people. So they can utilize same-day service, ideally a cheaper ride for them as well. And we subsidize, or rather city and county subsidizes part of their trip. And let's see, excitingly, county actually went up compared to last year, 8%. And city went down 6%. Usually that's switched. But overall, we're at about 5% change over last year combined with those two programs. And then Vanpool is the last service. That's the dark blue box. Our van pool program currently supports 11 groups. Continues to be a great service for workers who live or work in nearby cities such as Williams, Winslow, Holbrook, and connect to Flagstaff. You can see this program just continues to thrive. So let's see, we're over halfway compared to last year. So we should see about 25,000 this year. That's a 41% increase over FY24 and 165% increase compared to pre-COVID. So you can see this program just continues to thrive. We're really excited about that. And I'm going to move on from this slide. So if anybody has a question about these, just pause me now. Otherwise, run the next slide, please. Awesome. Okay, so compared to our peers, so this is 2 years, this is data from FY23, so it's 2 years old. So we are just, we're coming out of COVID during this time, things are reopening, so put your mind there. But it's always really nice to see us compared to our peer agencies. And so some of these are aspirational peers such as Tucson or Lubbock, larger cities. Missoula and Logan are a little bit more like similar population size, similar transit service area, et cetera. So overall, Flagstaff, so now we're just focusing on fixed route buses. Overall, Flagstaff is doing really good compared to our peers. Our cost per hour is somewhere in the middle, in a reasonable amount in that range. Our passengers per hour, so that efficiency metric, we're leading the pack with Tucson, which is wonderful. Our boardings are quite reasonable compared to our actual similar size cities. Obviously, Normal, Lubbock, and Tucson have much larger populations. So yeah, they're seeing a little bit more ridership there, but the boardings per capita, I like that really equalizes. And you can see we're really on par with Tucson, a very large city, a very large transit system. So really exciting to see these metrics. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And these are paratransit, so same. And I apologize, I noticed Tucson got cut off on this. I'll make sure the board has Tucson included for paratransit. But again, we're really kind of in the middle of the pack. Paratransit is a very costly service, as you saw in the last slide. So we're not looking to, get people on paratransit unless, they need it. This is what it's for. And then ideally have alternatives like taxi service that can help support their trip needs at a lower cost to Mountain Line. So here, you can see our cost per hour is about middle. Our passengers are per hour. Our efficiency is similar to our peers. Maybe a little on the low end, but not by much. And we do hope to see that. So this is a misnomer. I actually just realized that paratransit, these numbers also include our microtransit program. So they're both on demand, and that is how we report them. So these numbers is paratransit and microtransit in FY23. So as microtransit continues to increase ridership, we hope to see these efficiency metrics, the passengers per hour, increase as well. Boardings, we're not looking for a ton of boardings, so that's fine. Compared boardings per capita, again, like a really reasonable amount. Yeah, kind of interesting. So next slide, please, Rhonda. This is the last peer agency slide. We're just looking at van pool, and only Tucson provides van pool among our peer agencies. So our cost per hour is a little higher than Tucson, but not by much, a very reasonable amount. Passengers per hour were a little bit more efficient than Tucson. Boardings, we have a little bit less than them by a lot. I know they do have a very strong van pool program. And then boardings per capita. So we have a really high rate per person of boardings on the van pool program. So fun to see us compared to our peers. And next slide, please, Rhonda. So now I'm going to go into a few slides on the scorecard and our key performance metrics that we adopted in 2023. So this is just a snapshot, our scorecard. I'm going to go into each of these strategic plan goals. Again, just stop me anytime if you have questions. Green indicates we met our goal, and red means we did not meet our goal. And I'm just going to jump into it. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So you can see a lot of red. Our on-time performance isn't quite where we're looking for it to be at that 95% mark. Definitely something I know operations and Randy, our operations director, is working on. The residents, I wanted to put this, residents who are more likely to be dependent on transit have the most frequent service. So as we continue to implement Prop 488 items, that goal will change in the future year. And so we are not implementing those changes in FY25, so it does not reflect here. And I'm excited to report on that next in 6 months, see how that changes, how we're continuing to really target residents that need transit service the most. And then you'll see on the last slide, there's a few KPIs, metrics that aren't refreshed every year. So they're not included here. I put them on the last slide, but just to give an indication of service excellence that we are using is that transit app rating. You can see we have increased compared to FY24. Transit app rating of 89% up to 93%, which is great. And continue looking at that, and possibly I'm also kind of queuing us up for next performance report. I'm going to be bringing some recommendations of changes, maybe something that's a little bit more fresh data wise that we can report on, something that I'm just kind of queuing you up for future items there. So transit app rating might be a future item that I request. Just wanted to get you familiar with looking at some of these items. And that is our real-time arrival app used on the bus. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And here's stewardship of resources. So the second strategic plan goal. We have our fleet and facility preventative maintenance completed on time. I think that equals 2 late preventative maintenances, which is huge. I mean, out of hundreds that are done just in that 6-month period. Our emissions saved by people riding the bus, this only applies to 28% of riders that do not have a vehicle. So, thinking of all the riders who do have a vehicle, there's quite a bit of benefits out there, just emission wise, for people riding the bus. And then just internally, emissions for mountain line vehicles, something we're tracking, and I'll touch on in the next presentation on electric buses. But really tracking how our electric buses are helping to reduce emissions for mountain line vehicles. While we haven't fully achieved our FY24 goal, we are far ahead from halfway. So very exciting there. Next slide, please. Here's investing in mountain line workforce goal, annual performance evaluations completed. You can see, so compared to all of last year, all 12 months, we were already meeting that, at 100%, meeting that performance evaluations and continuing to complete those. That's definitely a goal and an objective in the strategic plan. So really exciting to see that number increase. Employee engagement, we're off by 1%. I'd say pretty great. Some trainings, some job changes, just something to really celebrate developing employees and leaders within Mountain Line. Next slide, please. This is enhanced safety culture. Our 4th goal of the strategic work plan. Sam and his safety team have definitely been working on a lot of trainings and getting these numbers to improve our preventable accident goals. So number of accidents that were preventable is 40%. That's our goal. We are at 51%, not quite there. I know there's a lot of training on that and hope to see that number decreasing. Even though the miles between accidents hasn't drastically changed, neither has the hours between employee injuries. So those are kind of similar, but again, we always want to see improvement year over year. And then percentage of staff recognized with the safety award, trying to be proactive and recognizing staff that are doing the right thing and hopefully have positive reinforcement to see the various metrics above go down. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And money bus riders saved by not driving in a personal vehicle. So we have more metrics under community engagement, but again, they're just not, they don't refresh every year. And I'll show you that in a minute, but this does. So really, again, interesting. Okay. About halfway through, and next slide, please, Rhonda. Last item is financial health. So we did meet our local dollar goal. So bus service is funded by local dollars and partnerships, increasing financial resiliency. So we're on target to meet that 67% goal for FY25. The capital spending, that second item, every dollar of local tax spent on buildings and buses, Mountain Line leverage is 4 times of investment in federal funding. You can see FY24 was incredible, 90%, and that was due to a land match. So that really, it helped a lot to skew that number. 80% is much more typical for Mountain Line year over year. So we're really excited to be on a typical level. And that's all I have on this item. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
TAC members, do you have any questions or comments for Busy?
This is Carol. I just wanted to offer congratulations for a job well done in that presentation. I really appreciated that you took the time to tell us what you were going to tell us and then told us how to look at this and walked us through so carefully. And so thanks a lot, Busy.
Anything else for her? I agree, Busy. Great presentation. We'll move on to the next item. Not seeing any other comments. And you're up again with the electric bus performance report.
Great. Next slide, please, Rhonda. So I only have, I think, a handful of slides here. Again, in front of me with any questions you might have. So here is the status of electric bus implementation. We have 2 electric buses in service, a Gillig and a New Flyer. They both went into service in 2023. You can see the battery capacity is different. So the Gillig has a larger battery capacity. New Flyer has a smaller battery capacity. And then we do have 4 Gilligs on order. We're hoping for them to come in 2026. And you can see we are increasing our battery capacity. And hopefully my presentation today will demonstrate support for this. Even though it's in place, it makes sense for us. And hopefully you'll also see that. Chargers at depot. So we're working with the Heliox mobile charger, just a little adorable thing that can be wheeled around since 2023 when we got our first buses. And we implemented that ABB pantograph charger just this last August. You can see the charging level dramatically increased. So that reduces the amount of time it takes for staff to charge. Next slide, please. And we're continuing to monitor performance and compare all of these things, compare manufacturers, chargers, and that's part of this effort, watching the data. And these are our various key performance indicators or KPIs that we're going to look at today. I'm always open if you have questions, you want to see other things, please let me know. Next slide, please. So this first one is efficiency per mile. Lower is better, the lower numbers. The orange line is our hybrids. That's 28 buses averaged. And then we have the 2 electric buses. So 5354 is New Flyer. It's the smaller battery. And 5355 is Gillig, and that's the larger battery. Not that it matters, but I'm happy to answer that question if you get to a slide and you're like, which bus is which? And you can see that our Gillig 5355 is kind of the lower performer on efficiency wise. So that is the top dashed blue line. The light blue line is the average between the electric buses. And then, so the orange is so much lower. It's not exactly apples to apples between electric buses and hybrid buses, but it's just something for comparison. That blip in March, there were a couple buses that were on long-term repair, and that just skewed all of the data for that month. So on the gallons per mile. So that was a fun rabbit hole to go down when I saw that blip. But overall, again, we like to see lower efficiency, lower numbers here, meaning higher efficiency. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And now I'm going to share compared to temperature, because temperature usually impacts battery electric buses. So because more energy is going towards heating the bus from the electric heating unit and keeping the bus at an optimal temperature. So that's just draining the battery a little bit more. And you can see, so the higher the temperature, the higher the efficiency. Again, efficiency, when our kilowatt per mile is lower, that means higher efficiency. It's very inverse, a little confusing. But again, you can see our two buses compared. One thing I want to note, and I was guessing this before I confirmed it. So if you notice in about August 2024, they both efficiency seem to be kind of similar. They both seem to be averaging a little lower, which is better. I'd like to note that Jeremiah and his training team had a robust training program in August of 2024. I'd like to suggest that our efficiency has increased due to operator training. It really depends on how our operators are pushing the gas, not pushing the gas, pressing the brake, not pressing the brake. There's so much involved, and just having trainers make sure that operators know how to do it best with our electric buses. I think we're seeing the impact on these charts here. So kudos to Jeremiah and his team. And then just wanted to know, we also had a training in May of 2023 when we first got the Gillig bus. So we have been doing training throughout, but I think the renewed training effort in August 2024 really paid off, as you can see here. Next slide, please. So gallons of diesel avoided. Our hybrid buses, they have a better mile per gallon efficiency compared to a typical diesel bus. And so we are counting the gallons of diesel avoided in our hybrid buses compared to a diesel typical bus. And so overall, let's see, a total of 82,000 gallons were avoided since we implemented electric buses to date between the electric buses and our hybrid buses. Next slide, please, Rhonda. And this translates into emissions that are saved. Excuse me. Awesome. And so we saved 280 tons of carbon dioxide, which is equal to removing 65 cars from the road for 1 year since we implemented electric buses. So just going back to September 2023 as this tracking of emissions and diesel gallons of diesel avoided. But overall, we're just really excited to see our contribution to Flagstaff's air quality. Yeah, next slide, please. This is my last slide, energy cost per mile. So again, we have our hybrid buses, the orange, it's higher. And there's that hybrid average of 78 cents per mile. This is only based on fuel. So diesel fuel for the hybrid buses and electricity for the two electric buses indicated in blue. So you can see that our electricity cost per mile is lower than the hybrids, than the diesel cost per mile. You can also see that the Gillig bus, even though it has a lower efficiency, it's not as efficient as New Flyer, the cost per mile is much lower. It can go for a little further. There's just a lot more benefits going on in back of house, you know, the way the Gillig works. So we're really excited to see these numbers supporting, of course, our Gillig purchase, the 4 buses I identified on the first slide. So this kind of goes back to supporting that decision. And then I just want to note that in July, there's that big peak in electricity costs. Our electric buses both had repairs, so they didn't get a lot of miles. So the little bit that they were charged just skewed the average. So that's what's going on there. And then in the 1.5 years since we've had electric buses, we have saved $34,000 using electric over diesel. And so that's an average of $1,000 per bus per month that we're saving using electricity instead of diesel. So that's all I have on this slide, on this presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Good information. Any questions for her?
This is Michelle James. I just wanted to say thank you, Busy, for this great analysis. It makes me very excited to see how well the Gillig is doing and how much money you guys are saving. It's wonderful.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Busy, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jeremiah and it's bus graphic and driver barrier.
Thank you, Chair and members of the TAC. So I don't think we celebrate enough to interview. So today we're here to just celebrate a couple projects that are being completed. So we are going to start with the bus graphics. So on the screen right now, I have our old graphics, the Mountain Line Classic Hybrid. It's on all of our 35-foot buses. And little background is these wraps are only good for about 7 years because they're on the road for about 16 hours a day, give or take. So they get a lot of wear and tear from environmental and just being out on the road. So part of that, we opted to redo the wrap. As you can see in these photos, we have a couple of our buses where the wraps are failing and just need an overall update. So when we decided to update, one of the major complaints we got from our riders is looking through the graphics on the windows was a bit hard. So I took this photo, try to show that the clear window, nice clear, and then where the graphics sit, it's a bit distorted. So we took that into effect and modeled the new graphics after our battery electric bus because our riders seemed to really enjoy the way they looked. So the overall design went simpler, got all the graphics off the windows, except for that little line, just like the electric bus. And we've seen great interactions with the public and our drivers actually. We had one driver, the second we did the first bus, sent an email to our CEO saying just how our buses look brand new after just doing the wrap. So this is what it looks like now. So we are in the process of getting all of our buses wrapped with this style. And you can just see how this bus looks brand new after being wrapped. So, can you press play? So this was what we used to model the bus. I thought this was a cool little video that Gillig sent us of our bus. They did a little drone shot of it. And this is the electric bus. There's no sound, so you're not missing anything. But you can see how we utilize that same design for our hybrids. So, part of this project, we really want to improve the look of our buses to encourage more ridership. Next will be our driver barriers. So during COVID, our mechanic team worked very hard and diligent to manufacture our own driver barriers to get us to collecting fares and improve the safety of our drivers. One thing to point out right now is something that we worked on improving is if you can see where I'm highlighting that little window was what the drivers had to talk and hand things to riders, which is a bit awkward. And so in our new doors, we actually got something that would improve that. But these doors did really well for us, but they were getting old and beat up. So our team, like I said, spent it. These are the members that actually designed, built, and installed the old barriers. And then the new doors their vapor barrier door came from LabTech. As you can see, we put a nice window in there so the drivers can interact with customers as needed, but also keeping it shut for safety. So far, every driver has greatly appreciated the update. Along with this, we also increased the airflow in the driver compartment, which made it more comfortable because the way the buses were designed originally with the HVAC, the doors weren't there. So let air pass through and circulate in that driver compartment, making it more comfortable for our drivers. With that being said, that's all I have celebrating this 2 projects being completed. Anybody have any questions?
Anybody have questions for Jeremy or comments? Thank you, Jeremiah, for your presentation, and we'll move on to the next item, which is fare-free transit update, and that's Heather.
Thank you, Chair and Transit Advisory Committee members. So this item was requested by a member of the Board of Directors. I don't have any slides for you, but wanted to make sure we told you the same information that we are going to share with the Board of Directors for their discussion. If you recall, when we made the decision not to go fare-free roughly 8 months ago, we did tell the board we would be happy to come back with additional discussion in the future. So that is what this conversation is designed to do. A couple of points from the staff report. At the time that we first looked at fare free, we had roughly $34,000 in fares. Our projection this year is over $800,000 in fare revenue. The Citizen Review Commission that really looked at Prop 488 and determined the amount we would ask for decided to prioritize service improvements over free fare in setting that rate. Additionally, we had conversations with Northern Arizona University as we have an agreement with them for the operation of Route 10. And that agreement actually captures it as in lieu of fares. So the question has been asked, if we go fare free, does that void our contract with Northern Arizona University? And that's an additional $600,000 in operating revenue that we use for our system. So again, we recommended that we prioritize expansion of our programs and use expansion of reduced fare to increase access to lower cost use of the program instead of going fare free. I did include in the staff report a description of the reduced fare expansions and what we are working on. So we do anticipate that riders will be able to access both veterans and military, access reduced fare using either veteran status or active military status in the coming 60 days. The last one that we are still working on is how to introduce reduced fare to individuals who have a low income status. And we are working with Coconino County to manage that, help us manage that, because they oftentimes are already doing case management for many individuals that are in low income programs. So again, the goal is to remind the board about these prior discussions and provide that update on the reduced fare program, and then hear their feedback on the next steps that they want to take. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. Staff are not recommending any action, but plan to participate in a conversation with our board of directors.
Thank you, Heather. Any questions or comments for Heather? Okay, not hearing none. Next is progress reports. The first three items, there are no presentations, but if board members have questions or would like to see some type of presentation, we would have to move them to a future meeting. And we can definitely do that if anyone has questions or would like to any more information on those items. The fourth item is summary of current events, and I'll turn that back over to Heather to see if she has anything she wants to present.
Thank you for that. I really only have 2 items to share with you. As mentioned early in the meeting, Jackie and I are in Washington, D.C. this week. We met yesterday with pretty much all of the Arizona elected officials. We were also fortunate enough to meet with DOT directly, as well as the Federal Transit Administration. We did this morning participate with the Southwest Transit Association in an additional meeting with the Federal Transit Administration. And after the TAC meeting today, we are going over to the Senate side to join the Community Transportation Association of America in meetings with senators on the Appropriations Committee. Our goal is to represent our legislative priorities, discuss reauthorization, and really talk about where we're at with getting grants funded, our projects funded, and getting that funding back to our community. Most of the conversations have gone really well. We received a lot of support from our elected officials about getting those funds both obligated and then reimbursed to Mountain Line. So really glad that we're here. It's a very interesting time to be here. It's also a very busy time to be here. So it's been great. And the only other thing that I really have to share today is the anniversaries that you can see on the screen. So I want to recognize and celebrate Busy Collins with 6 years. Busy is currently serving as strategic performance planner, but she has been lead on many of our projects, including our 5-year plan. Bernice Tooley is currently serving as paratransit superintendent. Bernice actually has 26 years with Mountain Line. She is our most longstanding employee. She did start out as a paratransit operator, but has served in a multitude of roles over the years. And we're grateful now that she has stepped into a leadership position within our operations team. Matt Kimmons, a transit operator with 4 years of experience. Phil Parrish, transit operator, now with 2 years of experience. And then Jackie Lenners, our deputy general manager, with 13 years of experience. And Jackie started out as our marketing manager, has served in several different roles over the years, and we're grateful to have her supporting our policy setting and goals in her newest roles. And with that, that's all the anniversaries I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions about our visit or these anniversaries, and we'll have more information at the April meeting as well about our visit here in DC.
Thank you, Heather. Any comments for Heather? I'm not hearing any. The next thing is talking about our next meeting. The TAC meeting is scheduled for April 3rd, 2025 at 10 a.m. Is there any things that we should agenda items or anything that the TAC would like to see brought to the TAC meeting next month? Not hearing any, I will make a motion that we go ahead and adjourn for the day. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thanks,